Batman Beyond began as a spin-off of the Batman animated series, first airing in early 1999. Set decades after Bruce Wayne's prime and after his crusade alienated himself from each of his former allies. His encounter with one-time delinquent Terry McGinnis reignites his war on crime. This wayward youth suffered a similar tragedy as the original Batman, his father being murdered after an act of corporate espionage. Terry took it upon himself to steal Batman's latest and cutting-edge Batsuit, with the aged Wayne eventually relenting to the young man's desire for justice. Becoming his mentor as the Tomorrow Knight swore to crusade across the streets of Neo-Gotham. For 3 seasons of television, a direct-to-video feature, a concurrent tie-in comic, and many guest appearances on the subsequent DC shows and films, Batman Beyond has become a permanent fixture of the Dark Knight's mythos. What he represents and where he stands among the pantheon of Gotham's crime fighters, especially in their heyday, is, in my opinion, rather muddled and subject to debate. On paper, this is Bruce Wayne's true successor, at least in the continuity of the DC animated universe. This being the timeline mainly including Batman the Animated Series, Superman the Animated Series, and the Justice League series of shows, which stands apart from and makes innumerable creative decisions contrasting the comic book source material of the main DC timeline. However, due to the popularity of the show and its world, elements of the Beyond universe have been incorporated into a few potential futures of the mainstream comic timeline. But the core question remains, did Terry McGinnis, the Dark Knight of the future, ever surpass the original? When Bruce Wayne allowed this young man to assume his mantle, certainly that was an implicit expectation. Eventually, either through advanced technology, training, experience, all under the first Batman's purview, would McGinnis grow to outshine his mentor. Despite the cult acclaim of Batman Beyond, you'd be hard-pressed to find a superhero with more adoration and fan-born respect than Bruce Wayne. Trust me when I say that when faced with any other crime fighter's impressive displays of skill and cunning, especially by those without powers, a good chunk of viewers will at least subconsciously assume Batman can just do it better. He features in nearly more comics, cartoons, movies, and video games than any other superhero, leading to a stockpile of badass fight scenes and legendary victories. So when faced with Batman Beyond's very premise, a hero beyond the original Caped Crusader, trained at least to equal or surpass Bruce Wayne, does the original Batman's reputation supersede Terry's entire thesis? To answer this question, I've watched, read, and cataloged every appearance of Batman Beyond, from episodes, crossovers, comics, guidebooks, and interviews, to provide the ultimate comparison between the Tomorrow Knight and the Dark Knight of Gotham's past. Does Terry's augmented strength channeled through his youth give him the edge? Did adapting to the new Gotham grant him advanced tactics? Did he ever become the new greatest detective? Before looking at the versions of McGinnis set in futures of the mainstream comic universe, I'll break down the feats and abilities of the animated original incarnation to see if this Batman is truly beyond. If you enjoy content and discussions like this one, you can become a channel member for as little as $1 a month to gain access to my private Discord server. It's an active and growing community of dedicated comic book fans which help to support my channel. Thank you, and please enjoy the video. Safe to say, not every episode gives insight into this subject. Sure, Terry often comes out on top against some truly impressive threats, but in my opinion, the most concrete way to tackle the subject is by honing in on instances where McGinnis faces apt comparison to Bruce's enemies, or just those villains themselves, or see just how relevant the elder Bruce Wayne still is compared to Terry. Thankfully, as soon as the 5th episode, we see the new Batman pitted against one of Bruce's principal foes, Mr. Freeze. While Terry does take pity on the poor doctor, they fight nonetheless, with Batman dodging these ice beams for a time until being totally encased before he can react. For comparison, both the original Batman and Batgirl especially have managed to dodge these same attacks in the past, with Wayne breaking free after being similarly frozen solid as soon as Dr. Freeze first appeared. While some might point to Freeze's new suit, we can't say for certain it's an outright upgrade from what we saw in, say, the new Batman Adventures, as he remarks how he took this mechanical body out of cold storage, meaning he'd already manufactured it decades ago, and yet still likely figured it at least wasn't enough of an upgrade to trade in his older armor to better face Bruce and company. If it was that much better, he would have used it back then without making more assumptions. On that note, Terry contends with yet another remnant of Bruce's foes in the 9th episode of Season 1, when steroidal venom patches become a craze among his high school's hockey team. In a fight with one of these athletes, 3 patches boosting his size moderately, McGinnis gets physically dominated and tossed aside, owing this loss to his underestimation of his foe's strength. Later on, he tracks down the source of the drug to the orderly assigned to take care of the now elderly Bane, who uses 5 patches to bulk up. This fight is much more even pitched, with Terry likely now aware of how big a boost Venom offers, yet still, it conveys an overall gap between the new and original Batman. As shown in the Mystery of the Batwoman movie, Bruce Wayne is more than capable of trading blows with and outsmarting Bane, much larger and likely stronger than his future caretaker. Not to mention that the mercenary himself is described as a brilliant and cunning trained killer with an intellect to match his strength within his official bios on websites, as opposed to hockey players and a random hospice worker. To add insult to injury, within the official tie-in comic Batman Beyond Volume 2 Number 1, set sometime around the end of Season 1, Bruce Wayne is mind-controlled and mounts a fight with his apparent successor. Mr. Wayne manages to sneak up on McGinnis, cracking apart the outer layer of his suit, launching him with a strike, weakening him with nerve gas, and judo tossing him off of the building they're fighting on. Both parties remark how they don't want to hurt the other, yet the elder Batman still outdoes his younger counterpart through skill alone. Even the official guidebook of the Beyond series states Bruce managed to teach Terry some new tricks here. While the Return of the Joker website notes how Wayne is still in good shape for an 80-year-old man, he's 80 years old, usually walks with a cane, has suffered a heart attack, and has more wear and tear than most men could endure. Yet he still outshines his roughly 17-year-old super suit sporting protege. The Batman Beyond Files was a guide released in 2000 covering up to the finale of the show's first season, which states that Terry must rely on Bruce's strategy and detective skills to survive, and calls McGinnis a crime fighter in training. But still, Terry has been a superhero for only about 13 episodes, with the 4th one of Season 2 proving that he is more than merely said speed and power augmenting Batsuit. As with Bruce's old utility belt and Nightwing's mask, McGinnis scores and destroys his own armor after it had been hacked by a rogue artificial intelligence. This is a great moment for Terry's growth, both as a character and in his combat aptitude. It shows that even his own raw strength alone is a match for his suit, and he can outsmart another consciousness wielding its weapons while only armed with a more classical arsenal himself. However, this only proves Terry is capable of besting this armor, and is of course not better off without it. This Batsuit uses neuromuscular amplification to boost the wearer's stats, so the question still remains if Batman Beyond surpasses the original when the man and the suit are working in tandem. Sadly, in the tie-in picture book Batman Grounded, released after the show finished airing, yet should be set at least before Season 3, as the reformed villain 10 is shown still working alongside her evil family. Old Man Batman takes up the cape and cowl again and helps Terry defeat the Royal Flush Gang. Each member of this team has managed to press Terry to varying degrees, so the fact that Batman can affect them at all speaks volumes, much less kick one in the face and KO another with a smoke bomb. Yet again, somehow, an 80-year-old Wayne is still depicted as competitive in the Beyond era and against his foes. Moving on to Season 3, in Episode 5, Bruce Wayne is exposed to a youth-restoring Lazarus pit, returning him to not quite his peak. Him and Terry, outside of his Batsuit, fight together against Ra's al Ghul's security forces. This heavy, in particular, shrugs off multiple blows from Terry before Bruce seemingly tackles that same guy so hard he's knocked out. With his armor, McGinnis then does battle with Ra's, having taken over his daughter's body to prolong his own life. The Demon's Head was shown to rival the original Batman's skills in the Batman animated series era. However, I'd be hard-pressed to assume his strength wouldn't be lessened when channeled through his daughter's body. Talia managed to easily beat Batgirl in the Batman and Robin Adventures #9, but that's pretty much it. No other feats to place her strength anywhere near Bruce Wayne's. Yet, against Terry, Ra's blasts him out of the air, slashes his suit across the chest, and only loses via Batman Beyond deflecting his sword strike into an electrical panel. This display, combined with what was shown prior, proves McGinnis still has a ways to go. 3 episodes later, Terry is forced to face the Starro-possessed Justice League featuring Superman. Against the Man of Steel, Starro speaks through him, calling McGinnis a novice. Yet, he still cleverly frees Superman via the Batmobile's weapons, who in turn helps him cure Green Lantern, Warhawk, Big Barda, and Aquagirl. This is a great feat for Terry, but remember how often the original Batman managed to get the better of metahumans in the Justice League shows. Green Lantern rival Sinestro, Superman villain Calibex, scores of Hawkmen and women, and to be honest, Superman did most of the work against the Starro League, which, keep in mind the older looking state of the Man of Steel for later. In Batman Beyond Volume 2, set after this episode, both Warhawk and Big Barda give Terry his credit as a warrior, which, whether or not he surpassed Bruce, clearly based on their first meeting, this is earned. Near the very end of the entire show, a martial arts cult member beats Terry so badly that Bruce has him train with one of his fellow students from decades ago. We can assume his skills increase here, but there's never really a moment or fight to show any massive improvement, unfortunately. He pretty much loses to that same cultist after his training. We know per the A New Hero in Town picture book that Bruce did instruct Terry in the martial arts to some extent after McGinnis first got the suit. Now for the big one, the Return of the Joker direct-to-video feature film. It must take place after Season 3's first episode, as Bruce is back in total control of his company. However, it was released after the entire show, and serves well as the ultimate finale. Terry starts the film by trading blows with a new team of Joker acolytes, with his fatigue mounting in the aftermath. The entire time after this brawl, he's wounded and exhausted from near non-stop heroics. Yet still, by the climax, he goes toe-to-toe with the resurrected Joker, deadlier than ever. Embodied by the former Robin Tim Drake, the Clown Prince of Crime would have his already lethal talents amplified by the muscle memory of the former crime-fighting duo. Here's the issue though, Terry really only lands one good kick to the nuts, which catches Joker off guard since the original Batman would never fight that dirty. Otherwise, he's woefully outmatched in terms of hand-to-hand weapons and strength. Terry is on death's door before he luckily uses Joker's conveniently discarded Joy Buzzer to fry the microchip housing the Clown Prince's consciousness, managing to free Tim Drake from his control. I hate to mitigate this victory here. This movie's awesome, but this is a roughly 47-year-old man with no tech boosting his strength, and after 3 seasons of a show, some tie-in comics, and a mild training amp, Terry is still mostly outclassed. But remember, he was not at 100% here. He's likely still some measure of wounded and exhausted, and this Joker is outright better than any versions Bruce had ever faced, despite Terry's very circumstantial victory. In the last episode of Batman the Animated Series, the original Batman and Joker clash fairly evenly, so I do think it's fair to say McGinnis is roughly in that caliber when combining his likely fatigue and Joker Beyond's superiority to the original. That being said, Bruce Wayne likely hit his true peak as a warrior years after Batman the Animated Series, and more so into the Justice League or Justice League Unlimited era. After his Lazarus bath, with gray hairs never seen during any of the present day media, he says he's very near or almost restored to his prime. More aptly, in the Justice League episode Injustice for All, Bruce is poisoned by Copperhead, jumped by various other villains, ordered ordered to get bed rest by Superman and Martian Manhunter, and yet still manages to totally dominate the Joker, meaning Bruce improves considerably between the end of BTAS and the Justice League shows. So what's the better showing? Being wounded and exhausted and easily beating a character, or being similarly fatigued and scoring a stronger version of that same character one time, but otherwise being no match for him? JLU might not even be Bruce's prime, as again, he's only not quite at his peak with white temples, and Amanda Waller only noted him as getting slower after the events of JLU. Joker does get the better of Batman in the Return of the Joker flashback, which was stated by the show's creators to basically be the definitive endpoint of the DCAU's modern era after Justice League Unlimited and any subsequent movies or tie-in comics. So you could chalk up this loss to old age, or more likely the emotional toll on Batman after witnessing his ward's torture and brainwashing at Joker's hands. Batman Beyond would soon after guest star in the Static Shock animated series, with the heroes doing the obligatory fight before teaming up thing, which ends with Static blasting Terry to the floor, with Old Man Bruce breaking it up. Terry is currently aware of Tim Drake's retirement from heroism, as well as the status of the Justice League, meaning this crossover should be after Batman Beyond Season 3 and Return of the Joker. Wayne insists that the two will need the other's help to fight the threat at hand, meaning these two shouldn't be far off in terms of overall abilities. Static, being from the present day, as well encounters the original Batman from the Justice League era. Upon first meeting the Dark Knight, Batman doubts that Static could help at all against the Joker, and after initially being captured by Static's villains coordinated by the Clown Prince of Crime, Batman and Tim Drake's Robin defeat a squad of Static's foes. Later, Static manages to free the Justice League, sans Superman and Wonder Woman, from Brainiac's mind control, which is consistent with Terry's caliber of crime fighter. After this, Lantern calls Static pretty good, but not yet ready for the Justice League, which is a step up from Batman saying he's pretty much useless. This all reaffirms that Terry, being roughly equal to Static, is a valuable hero even among a team of metahumans, but is still firmly below the legends of yesteryear. Furthermore, in JLU's episode The Once and Future Thing, an alternate timeline version of Terry is assisted by the Batman and Green Lantern of the past, with Bruce managing to keep up with and outmaneuvering a cybernetically enhanced ghoul. Something else to add, in the Justice League vs. the Fatal 5 movie set after JLU, fellow leaguer Mr. Terrific manages to outdo two Fatal 5 members in close quarters combat. Key among them being Tharok, a cyborg from 1,000 years in the future. With Batman being a greater martial artist than Mr. Terrific, this goes to show that Bruce Wayne should be more than capable of dealing with even greater tech than what's in Terry's suit. For any remaining doubts, look to the bonus features of the DVD release of the show. James Tucker, an episode director of Batman Beyond and producer of that series and Justice League and JLU, stated,
"Terry is just a punk kid in a suit, so the suit has to do a lot more work for him than the original Batman suit had to do."
Paul Dini, with similar credits, did say this,
"Bruce is more of a tactician, a warrior, someone who has studied all levels of fighting. Terry's a brawler. He just gets in there and he goes on instinct alone. It enhances the strength quite a bit. It sends readouts directly, into the mask. There's an uplink with the Batmobile and also the Bat computer. It really does allow Batman to be 200% more efficient than he was before."
Based on everything shown up to now, I think it's pretty much out of the question to claim Terry is 2 times faster or stronger than Bruce at his peak. Efficiency is defined as getting results with as little effort as possible, so Terry's got that going for him, but the feats and scaling speak for themselves. Again, this DVD extra was made years after Batman Beyond and JLU had come and gone, so multiple producers who made Return of the Joker and the rest of the shows looked back at everything they made and said, yeah, Terry's just a punk. DC would, for Batman's 75th anniversary, release a Batman Beyond short showing Terry facing a robot duplicate of Bruce Wayne, getting honestly bodied before using a device to short-circuit it. Realizing a small army of Batman robots stand before them, Mr. Wayne, armed with his old utility belt, would presumably help his protege defeat them. There's not much to suggest at what point in Terry's history this takes place, assuming it's after Return of the Joker due to its air date only drives the point even further. Terry can't beat an android copy of the original Batman, which was stated to be his most formidable opponent, in sheer hand-to-hand. And 80-year-old Bruce once again assumably puts up a fight alongside Terry. The Crisis on Infinite Earths 3-part movie trilogy saw Batman Beyond return to animation for the first time since that short. Due to the nature of the multiverse, it's hard to say if this is supposed to be the DCAU Terry, but I figured this was the best place to break down this appearance. Either way, he was losing a 1v1 against the Batman of this universe and needed help from Earth 2 Grayson to turn the tide. This sums up the original version of Batman Beyond. We get a very minor glimpse of him during the Season 2 finale of Justice League Unlimited, providing next to no insight into how far he's come as a crime fighter. So given Terry's feats encompassing his original interpretation, I'd say it very plainly that no, he did not surpass the original Batman in terms of combat abilities, tactics, detective work, or really anything for that matter. Maybe you can make the case that he could match or at least rival the Bat family as they were towards the end of Batman the Animated Series, but other than that, he would fall very short of especially Bruce Wayne's peak. But the story doesn't end there, as the embers of the DCAU and Batman Beyond in particular would be stoked in the years since Justice League Unlimited's conclusion. To get this one out of the way, Paul Dini and Alan Burnett wrote The Adventures Continue from 2020 to 2023, wherein a super soldier steals what's implied to be a Wayne Tech prototype for what would become Terry's suit in the future. Said fighter heavily pressing Batman due to her augmented strength. I'm first looking at this post-JLU project in particular because despite being written by two of the major scribes of the DCAU, this series is full of elements that contradict the animated continuity itself, with some of their choices here seemingly going out of their way to ignore or subvert the events of Batman Beyond's future. Dini noted that this comic is perhaps the season of BTAS we would have gotten if the crew weren't assigned to make Batman Beyond instead, which might coincide with these contradictions to imply they're more or less ignoring that timeline altogether. The idea that Batman Beyond exists as anything more than a possible future of the DCAU depends on which crew members you ask and when you ask them in the first place. If you want to accept this as a prelude to Batman Beyond, the woman who fought Batman was actually already a trained soldier before wearing the power suit rather than the punk kid who'd eventually adorn the completed prototype. That's the best explanation for it and could prove to show how much further Terry has to tap into the suit and his own potential. But the biggest addition to the epic of Batman Beyond would be found in the Batman Beyond and Justice League Beyond comic books. Officially, per DC itself, this book and subsequent entries would serve as legitimate continuations of the DCAU, but now with certain events up until then only shown in the mainstream comics being apocryphally referenced in an attempt to legitimize these stories in the eyes of mainline comic readers. It is categorically not set after the Prime comic continuity, with Adam Beechant himself clarifying that even references made to comic events don't really mean anything.
Who knows what No Man's Land meant in the history of this continuity? It may have been the same thing, it may have been an approximation of the same thing, it may have been something completely different.
For all intents and purposes, these Earth 12 comics assume the DCAU as backstory and are officially designated as sequels to the Batman Beyond show. Terry would first reappear in the Superman Batman Annual number 4, with the original World's Finest calling him a boy doing a man's job and a Batman still learning. Remember, this is set after the entire show. On the note of this aged Man of Steel, the writer of the Superman Beyond book stated that he's actually grown weaker as he's aged, meaning Terry's feat in The Call was only against an out-of-prime Superman, and even he called Terry green. In Hush Beyond, Bruce decides that Terry alone isn't cutting it, so he builds multiple bat drones to assist him in the field. Meanwhile, a crazed clone of Dick Grayson manages to leave Terry for dead. Terry is exhausted here, but by that same token, the Grayson clone wants to keep McGinnis alive. This was even called the fight of the young Batman's life in the issue's official description, meaning Hush Beyond was likely a greater threat than the revived Joker at the very least. Despite their strained relationship, Bruce does admit that Terry does the job very well, which to me does showcase improvement and coincides well with Static being praised by Green Lantern. Yet still, the trend among Beyond titles to still show the original cast as relevant even against foes which can press Terry continues, as the true Dick Grayson does battle with his clone and the Batbots which he'd hacked. The writer would detail the former Nightwing's injuries as such.
Dick's got a permanent bad back from his life as Robin and Nightwing, and that he has a bullet near his spine from an encounter with the Joker years before.
That said, Dick will continue to trade blows with villains which test Terry for some time, and like Bruce, his best years are well behind him, which hurts McGinnis' case by that much. In subsequent arcs, Batman Beyond very impressively holds his Justice League at bay, with Bruce having trained him to defeat them on just such an occasion, until his feelings towards Aquagirl causes his concentration to lapse. This is great, but nothing we haven't seen Bruce Wayne do as well. The subsequent 10,000 Clowns arc would see the new Joker King beat Terry within an inch of his life, with the writer stating,
"Shot to the head, shot to the head, shot to the head. This is a regular guy, more or less, taking out Batman by acting logically and with commitment."
Terry technically wins the day by the end, but with plenty of help from the near-crippled Nightwing and Bruce's aid. This same Grayson thinks Terry's a punk.
Check out how fast Dick assumes control of the damage control effort. It's second nature to him, having led super teams before, and he's not the type to let a young punk give him orders.
That he might never be better than Bruce, despite becoming his new mentor and giving him training on top of everything Wayne taught him, with Terry unable to perform Dick's acrobatic moves outside of his suit. Justice League Beyond 15 proves Wayne is still a better detective. Justice League Beyond 2.0 number 23 shows Terry in a kryptonite battlesuit losing to the Justice Lord Superman, who is likely also out of his prime per being as old as the main Superman, who states that his Bruce could beat him, but Terry cannot. Speaking of Superman, he believes the original Batman to still be a better hand-to-hand fighter than his successor, and in the milestone 30th anniversary issue, a 35-year-old Static tries to motivate McGinnis, who lately doesn't feel up to the task of wearing Bruce's mantle. This is at least after season 3, as again, Static refers to the company as Wayne Enterprises, implying Bruce regained total control of his business. Static says Terry might be able to surpass his mentor someday, but only if he first accepts himself. I could go on, but these pieces of evidence from as far as the most recent entries into Earth 12's timeline only serve to add to the same thesis given by his animated appearances. Aged, lesser versions of the classic Bat family can still keep up with Terry, and he simply has not usurped their mythical reputations. Much to his credit, however, this kid is still about 19 or 20 at the oldest by the time these books basically ended. Bruce Wayne himself didn't even begin crime fighting until he was years older than this, whereas Terry would benefit from a breadth of experience, training under the older and wiser dynamic duo, with constant upgrades to his suit and crime-fighting technology. Beechin did confirm that the episode epilogue is set after these comics.
These stories fall between the end of the original animated series Batman Beyond and when the final Justice League Unlimited episode epilogue takes place.
And yet still, according to Amanda Waller, Terry never managed to match Wayne's intellect after all those years. In the Very Merry Multiverse special, we find an aged Terry training his daughter to be the new Batman, now assuming Bruce's role, but much like an epilogue, this is only the briefest of glimpses into McGinnis' future. But the nature of the DC cosmology includes infinite universes, as well as timelines branching off from innumerable points. This would perhaps best be showcased via the successive events of Future's End and Convergence, with the former storyline introducing a new version of Terry, now set in a potential future of the, at the time, mainstream New 52 continuity. Sometime in the 2040s, the Brother Eye artificial intelligence has transformed nearly all life into androids, with the aged Bruce Wayne hoping to send himself back in time to prevent this AI's creation. Unfortunately, he is wounded, forcing Terry McGinnis to take his place. This already suggests even this older Wayne is all around more capable than Terry. Of course, the time machine undershoots McGinnis into the past, instead sending him to 5 years after the New 52's modern day, so somewhere around 2017. 2017 based on real-world dates used in the New 52 around that time. The actual Futures End series features many different characters, leading to few impressive showings from Batman Beyond. In issue 28, its summary suggests a fight between Terry and this 5 years plus New 52 Batman is a toss-up, but they never really get into a proper fight. McGinnis does manage to surprise and evade his mentor's grapple hook and escape. Shockingly, in a battle with a Joker Batman Brother Eye mech from Terry's future, he does lose his life with Tim Drake taking up his mantle. Again, this is the third Robin from 5 years into the future relative to the New 52. Sadly though, he is rusty as he'd retired years prior. He would time travel, this time to Terry and Bruce's original intended location, and is then sent to an all-new future after his choices in the past undo most of the damage caused by Brother Eye. He would enjoy a brief solo run here lasting for 16 issues, with Tim himself and even the book's description bluntly stating that he was not good enough to be Batman. He learns that Terry is still alive in this new timeline, and after he manages to defeat an amnesiac McGinnis, while Tim's own suit was powered down, he gives the mantle back to Terry. Around this time, Dan Jurgens, one of the writers of Futures End and the only scribe of Tim's stint as Batman Beyond and then the following book again about Terry, stated that Tim does not fall short compared to McGinnis. He's fairly equal to Bruce's intellect, but he's weaker than, yet close to Bruce Wayne, and finds it tough to live up to the original Batman's example, and especially Nightwing's. This should serve as well as a baseline for Terry going forward. Weaker than, yet close to Bruce Wayne, but still not as much of a tactician even compared to Tim Drake, which is probably the highest his stocks have looked so far. He also stated multiple times that unlike the DCAU version, this Terry is not a clone, which may limit his overall potential depending on who you ask. This leads us to Batman Beyond Rebirth, which I suggest you all go out and read, it's great, and it did firmly place its events decades after the mainline contemporary continuity, which had since been cosmically revised to combine elements of the classic post-crisis timeline with the more modern New 52. This new quote-unquote main canon version of Terry seemingly still experienced many episodes of the original show, at least in a vague sense. Whenever a villain or plot line from the old show is brought up, the writer just assumes you've seen that episode, and he should be a few years older than his Earth 12 counterpart. After Tim Drake stepped down, McGinnis was similarly rusty, and cites his reliance on his suit and Bruce's aid as detrimental to his overall abilities. Unfortunately for his potential character growth, he gets a new upgraded suit with an AI that can fight for him, and Bruce Wayne is revealed to still be alive and assumes his usual mentor role. However, Wayne corrects Matt McGinnis' assumption that Terry needs Bruce's help, signaling great confidence in the new Batman's abilities. By the 9th, 10th, and 11th issues, Terry's new X7 Batsuit would be forced to go toe-to-toe with the grown-up Damian Wayne, who is around 45 years old according to the series writer.
Damian at that point, we have to assume, is somewhere around 45 years old.
This would be McGinnis' biggest test so far, as Bruce notes how Damian has even surpassed his own peak. The sad fact is, this fight is pretty one-sided in the young Wayne's favor. He has more experience as he actually wielded the X7 in the past. Terry lands a single punch, while otherwise having his own weapons used against him. He gets knocked around, all before Damian admits he was holding back and brings his Dragon Bat into the fray after McGinnis gives himself totally over to his suit's AI. The new head of the demon has Batman Beyond dead to rights before he sees the original Batman, aka his father, being nearly killed by his own bodyguard, with McGinnis then overpowering its control. To summarize this fight, Terry in a deadlier suit doing all of the fighting for him essentially loses badly to someone who has surpassed Bruce Wayne, while he mostly held back the entire time and eventually returned to the light side by the end of the battle. It's also very unlikely Terry could replicate that display display for whatever it's worth, as he goes back to his original suit with no AI. It is upgraded and proves stronger than at least the very original suit. Still, by this point, Bruce is totally confident in McGinnis' skills as he watches him perform an escape with the exact same methods he himself would have employed. In issue 25, Bruce says Matt's new suit offers far more protection than Nightwing's, which I guess it literally does cover more of Matt's face and head, but as shown thus far, it matters less about the suit or the armor, and more of how strong the man inside truly is, which is proven as the original Joker manages to capture Matt in an attempt to recreate death in the family. Speaking of, Joker creates a robot mech, calling Terry an improvement over Bruce. This is the biggest smoking gun so far, and doesn't seem out of line considering how impressed and confident Wayne has been in McGinnis' abilities and upgrades to his suit. Even Dick doesn't think Terry needs a Robin. However, as far as detective abilities, Bruce still stands supreme. The next arc sees Damian jump by League ninjas during their betrayal, where he would have been killed if not for Goliath's rescue. I'm partial to saying Damian was just caught off guard here, or he didn't possess his best armor or weapons at the time, as later on, Terry, Nightwing's daughter, and Damian himself take down scores of these same ninja. Maybe Damian was strengthened by his Lazarus bath, with Bruce stating his healing compound shares some traits with the restorative waters, but this isn't pure Lazarus, and the younger Wayne still has injuries and the need for bandages before taking down scores of ninja alongside Batman Beyond, so I think he was genuinely taken by surprise. Per time travel, Terry is sent to 2020 and must avoid running into Bruce Wayne at his prime to prevent any more glitches in the time stream, which, despite all of his feats and improvement by now, McGinnis still thinks that may be impossible. Back in his future, Wonder Woman says Bruce has the most willpower out of any man while he undergoes surgery, with this adventure seeing Diana formally induct Terry into the Justice League. This would mark the end of Dan Jurgens' tenure on the character, spanning all the way from Future's End to Tim's tenure as Batman Beyond and now the Rebirth storyline. Keep in mind, on the onset, rusty versions of Tim and Terry were stated to be close to Bruce Wayne in physical strength, at least his New 52 variant. McGinnis then gets a considerable upgrade to his durability via Bruce's tinkering. Combine that with Joker's sentiments and his mentor's confidence, and I could totally understand if someone came away from this book thinking Terry had finally done it, at least in terms of raw durability. As far as pure martial arts, I'd still say McGinnis is a ways away, simply based on his performance against Damian, and his lack of confidence in the face of a prime original Batman. We know Bruce improved in the years between present-day DC and the Beyond era, which should be the peak which Damian is stated to have surpassed, so maybe being super generous, the X7 variant of Terry could slot between either 2020 Bruce and his peak in the past of the Beyond timeline, but still below Damian. It's hard to say, as even with the X7, he maybe scores the head of the demon about twice before he pulls a Vader and saves his loved one. In 2021, Batman Urban Legends would return us to the world of Neo-Gotham as Bruce Wayne actually dies, leaving Terry to protect the city on his own for the first time, setting up the books Neo-Year and Neo-Gothic. According to Batman the Multiverse of the Dark Knight, an illustrated guide, these books should still serve as sequels to the Dan Jurgens run. They also feature references to Brother Eye and Matt's tenure as Robin, seemingly connecting them tangentially. We also get allusions to canon events from Batman's past, more so associated with the main comics, plus in the animated world, Bruce lives well into Terry's physical prime, whereas here he dies while McGinnis is around 22. The following stories would serve as a true crucible for the character, forcing him to create his own image of the Dark Knight apart from any of the original's immediate influence. The newest evil AI villain plaguing Neo-Gotham forces Terry to strip himself of his suit's tech-based advantages. He trains for 100 days in the ruins of the original Batcave and develops a new hard light-based armor far stronger than his prior one. At first, he considers Commissioner Barbara Gordon as the best detective in Gotham now that Bruce is gone, with her genius as Batgirl nearly equal to Bruce's in the current canon, before Neo-Gothic sees Terry surpass her. More than once, he manages to to defeat villains that plagued him in the Rebirth run in as little as 1 page or even a single conversation. Writing duo Colin Kelly and Jackson Lansing state that this is a wiser Terry than what was seen in the cartoon. He can even be as smart as Tim Drake, another rival to Bruce Wayne in terms of intellect. While he doesn't have Bruce's exact skill set, he develops his own to become both a self-actualized Batman.
In Neo Year, it was about how do we take this character and move him from being a apprentice Batman to standing on his own as Batman with Bruce Wayne out of the picture.
And one of the finest Batman of any future timeline. Neo Year, being set after the Rebirth run, and even the cartoon in some sense, parallels the classic Batman Year 1 story to tell the tale of Terry surpassing the original Dark Knight by becoming his own man and reforging that legend to best suit who he is, which is exactly the advice Static gave to his multiversal counterpart. Again, McGinnis is still years younger than Bruce was when he began his crusade, even by the time of Neo-Gothic, so Bruce will likely retain the edge in terms of experience for a good while. But when combining his strength and wit shown throughout his Rebirth run, respect from both heroes and villains of old, as well as the themes and trials undertaken in Neo Year and Neo-Gothic, the intent seems to be that Terry McGinnis's Tomorrow Night has finally surpassed Bruce Wayne's Dark Knight. So to summarize, the animated version of Terry falls short of the original Batman's peak, even accounting the Earth 12 comics. However, the more quote-unquote main canon Batman Beyond has a much better case of outdoing his predecessor in some of, if not most, areas pertaining to combat. But because of constant shifts in the timelines, reboots in the present, and the simple fact that Batman Beyond is only one of infinite futures, this is inherently subject to change with every new story added to the Dark Knight's adventures. But there's still more Batman Beyond in store for us, as he is currently a time-displaced member of the Justice League and will be featured in the Terrific 10 in October to set up the DCAU event beginning in November. Which version of McGinnis is this? I'm not sure, but I will be reading nonetheless. And just as I was editing this video, a new Batman Beyond Static Shock miniseries got announced. So far as we've been told, Terry will, again, be stripped of his technological advances. It is a crazy coincidence this story seems like it was written in reaction to the bulk of this video. It's going to be a sequel to that Milestone special I talked about, so it should be canon to the DC animated universe, and features a 17-year-old Terry, so I guess it'll slot between the original show and the Earth 12 comics. Very excited to read this, and it should boost Terry's stocks even further. Thanks for watching. Check out my dozens of other videos breaking down the skills and abilities of all of our favorite characters, and I'll see you all next time.